What's up guys, Phoenix here. This video is going to be another DevPro duel video, and this time it is going to be with some Mermail Atlantean games. Now this isn't the deck list that I put up on my channel earlier today. That deck list was what I played, ARG Charlotte, and this deck list is the other list that I mentioned in that video that I was testing that I honestly should have played. This deck list has a much stronger overall Monarch matchup, while it basically does inherently just take the loss to Cosmo Dark Planet. That's very much a card that this deck cannot get over game 1. The literally only card that can get over Cosmo Dark Planet game 1 is Gamma Seal, the Sea Turtle Kaiju. That's literally the only card that can get over it because you tribute over it. But because you don't have access to Dweller off Instant Fusion, and you can't play your Equip spell to boost your Mermails, you very much take the loss to Dark Planet with this build. So that's why I kind of stayed away from it, because I didn't know if people were going to be trying to play Dark Planet in their Cosmo decks. But this build specifically has a much more, of a potential good matchup against Monarchs, extra deck Monarchs or domain Monarchs alike, simply because of the accessibility that you have to Dragoons and all your Atlanteans, as well as the addition of Gen X Undyne being that additional engine that gets you into those Atlantean cards. Undyne, while it's definitely not as good as Neptibus in its raw, vacuum form of Neptibus being able to add Dragoons, also triggering Dragoons and giving you just a bunch of extra cards that way, Undyne triggering on summon is actually very, very important, and the fact that it's level 3 and can be searched off of Pike is also very important in the slower matchup that is extra deck Monarchs. The Monarch matchup, if they do make you go first and you do open a way to Pike and you don't have open Neptibus play, you can easily just Pike, ditch a card, search Undyne, and then as well as if you're able to follow that up with Instant Fusion or Allure of Darkness or anything like that, then you're absolutely just in a very, very favorable position because they cannot Stormforth away your Neptibus, because you're actually going to be using Neptibus in a very much supporting fashion to Gen X Undyne. Neptibus very much takes a back seat in the Monarch matchup, where with this deck you're able to use your Undynes triggering on summon to send the cards that you need and actually sort of situate yourself better in the matchup, because without Undyne in the deck, you literally are very, very vulnerable because you have less access into your Atlanteans in the Monarch matchup, but then you also, you're very reliant on Neptibus. You absolutely have to resolve Neptibus, and if you don't, because it's extremely likely for them to Karaz it or Stormforth it away on your own turn, then that just becomes a very, very big problem for you in your potential game plan. But yeah, that's basically enough rambling for this deck list, and I guess we'll just jump straight into the first of the games. Alright, so first of 4 games, I'm playing against my friend, and he's playing Brilliant Monarchs, Seas Monarchs, Extra Deck Monarchs, whatever you want to call the deck, and he wins Rock, Paper, Scissors, and he knows that I'm playing Mermails for this recording session, so he decides to let me go first. Now my hand is actually just a really, really strong hand for going second, but going first, the Mermail deck really struggles. Now, honestly, if this hand had a Dragoons in it instead of the controller, it would have been a lot stronger as well. If it had an Instant Fusion, I could have potentially taken 2 cards out of his hand off of a Mooling Glace play, but ultimately, I'm just contemplating on whether or not I want to actually do any play, or if I actually just want to just end my turn without a play, because I'm not really afraid of the Monarch deck just OTKing me out of nowhere, and then if I'm able to go into his established board with an Undyne play, and then also have seen a 6th card, then it potentially just is really good for me. But I ultimately decide, why not just take this moment to actually see what could potentially happen, and so I summon Undyne and send Dragoons, add controller, because I honestly just don't want that 2nd controller in the deck also, because if I draw it for next turn, I would actually probably legitimately just slit my wrists, because it's absolutely ridiculous. But so I just decided to just go in and see what will basically happen. I could have just stopped after the Undyne searching Neptibus, but honestly I just decided that, let's keep going, let's see what happens, let's see what the result can potentially be. Now obviously this play is more correct in sided games, where you side in Lind and Sphere, because then you can actually get Lind and Sphere off of the Megalo that you summon, and then that's a defensive line, and if you have any other water monsters in your hand, then that also just, benefits you, because it gets you to more Undynes, it gets you to all these other things. But ultimately I just decided to go for, just unloading my hand, trying to make Gaios, put the Mizuchi on it because that can negate the Pantheism, so that I'm basically just putting my faith in the fact that I can potentially cause him to brick with this setup of negating his Pantheism with the Mizuchi, and then being able to negate his idea with Gaios. So I'm basically just trying to force him into a brick scenario, because if it gets back to my next turn, I'm able to normal summon Gen X Controller, synchro with either Undyne or Dragoons into either Stardust Charge Warrior, which is the ideal because that lets you draw another card, or with Dragoons and make Odd Eyes Meteor Burst just to be a bigger body. But ultimately, he ends up having an actual combination of cards that can play through the board, because, it is very likely, because of the fact that, Pantheism can search Stormforth and he could potentially have either a way to, he could either have the trap that he discards off Pantheism, or he could have Domain, or he could have Red Layer, or he could have Brilliant Fusion. Like, there's multiple different cards that could allow him to put one body on his board and then use the Pantheism to just search Stormforth and get rid of my Gaios. It's very, very much a high possibility, but I was just trying to, you know, test the result. You know, that's kind of how you just try and like learn different things, that you test the result. Even though you know it might not be the best result, test it. See if it actually works out in your favor is the way that you just kind of want to go with it, because honestly the game was very, very much not in my favor, me going first anyway, and honestly I'd rather just try something different, see if I could actually, you know, force him into a brick scenario where maybe he only has 1 or 2 starter cards that are actually like good enough to use, stuff like that. But anyway, he ends up Stormforthing away my Gaios, normal summons, or tribute summons his Aether at level 6, which he reduced off Domain, specials another Aether out of his deck after setting up his grave with the trap, attacks over my Undyne and my Dragoons, either goes to his hand in the end phase. He doesn't even have Stormforth, but he does have either that was tribute summoned on the board, so he can go either into Karaz. And I draw Moulinglace, and I check my grave, and there's like 9 waters in there, so I'm like, yeah, let's just go to the next game here. So, next game, I win rock, paper, scissors, I get to choose. I choose to go second, and my hand has 2 of the cards you don't want to draw in it. This deck does actually have a lot of, like, essential, like, what you can call garnets, is what people would refer to them as. It's just basically just bricks, cards you just do not want to draw. But the Mermail deck is very, like, iconic in the fact that with Neptibus and with Undyne allowing you to get access into Dragoons and just being able to get a lot of different like card advantage accessibility off of those cards, you can effectively play with 3-card hands and stuff like that and actually do decently well. So even though I have Controller and Mizuchi in my hand, I still have the 1-for-1, which actually makes use of the Controller and then gives me Neptibus, and I'm still playing with a 3-card hand, but Neptibus gives you 2 extra cards anyway off the Dragoons. So there is that, and the other 2 cards in my hand are just great combo pieces. But, so, he specials Mithra, normal's Idea, get Eidos out of his deck, and they tributes the Eidos for Karaz, pops his Mithra and his Idea, and draws 2, and then just sets 2 and passes. A very, very weak opening. He just didn't have Pantheism, didn't have any big Monarch, any way to get into it, and like just ultimately just, it's not necessarily a brick, but he tried to dig for additional pieces and just didn't get there. So I guess it can be a brick, but he actually did put a body on board. So it's kind of a weird way to class it. It's just like a suboptimal hand, I guess, but I get to start my turn with 1-for-1 for Neptibus, use Neptibus to send Dragoons, add Dragoons, and then off the Dragoons I add Marksman, because at this point I'm going to start trying to at least deal with at least one of his back row, because I don't want to like go blind into 2 of them. I'm more than fine going blind into 1, because like you can actually like play around those cards and stuff like that, but trying to use Marksman here to essentially bait out any like Stormforth that might be residing there, even though knowing that as soon as the Neptibus hits the board, it would probably have baited Stormforth in either in his hand if he had been able to draw into it. So there is that. But after I use Teus to search Pike and get all that sort of nonsense situated, getting rid of his set card, which ended up being a Prime Monarch, I end up using Instant Fusion for Norden, special summoning the Dragoons from grave, and then getting a Dweller on the board. And I look at his grave, he has no Monarch spells and traps in grave to go with that trap, so I just go ahead and activate the Dweller here, because it's absolutely safe. He can't summon his trap to potentially block attacks or anything like that. And so I'm contemplating what I want to do. I still haven't normal summoned this turn, and I'm keeping that in mind. I'm just kind of figuring out what I want to do, if I want to try and go for Moulinglace, if I want to do any of that sort of nonsense. And I end up adding Megalo because I realized that I have the Dragoons in my hand still. I've done all of this, and I still have the 1 Dragoons left in my hand. Like, wow. So I end up sending the Dragoons and the Pike out of my hand to grave to summon the Megalo from my hand. And I check my grave, and I have 4 waters in grave. And so at this point, I'm just like, oh, this Dragoon starts getting Moulinglace, and I can use Megalo, tribute off one of my waters, and then the Moulinglace will be live, and I can summon it. So honestly, that was the kind of play string I was going for, but I actually just forgot that Neptibus, its sent to grave by water monster effect was mandatory. Because as you'll see later in the turn, while I'm debating here, I'm debating on if I should get Diva, and then I could just send like a card and normal summon Diva. But I ended up adding Moulinglace and then tributing off the Neptibus, because I was expecting to just not use Neptibus' effect and then special Moulin and keep the Teus because it had more of an attack. It was a bigger body. But I honestly should have just tributed the Teus. Should have tributed the Teus, and the only thing that's holding me back from dropping this Moulinglace at this point is like the fact that that Mithra token is there, because like I could easily just overlay into Dracossack, make tokens there, pop, drop the Moulinglace, do all this sort of nonsense. But I still have game on board anyway. So I tribute for the Megalo, and I get the Dragoons back, and the Dragoons and the Undyne and the Teus and the Megalo with 2 attacks over his entire board for the game. Honestly, in retrospect, yes, should have distributed the Teus, because that would have taken the 2 cards out of his hand off Mooling Glace. Dweller is already active, so the trap couldn't activate, even if I did discard a Monarch spell or trap. So honestly, it was just a better play, but I forgot Neptubus' second effect was mandatory. I thought that one was like optional, potentially, because like it's just, you never don't activate it. There's very few situations where you don't activate it. But anyway, third game, he wins rock, paper, scissors, and he chooses to make me go first. And so I have Pike, Gun, Gamma Seal, Dragoons, and Allure of Darkness in my hand. And I was like, alright, this is okay. So we normal summon the Pike, and we search for the Undyne, and then the Dragoons will trigger, which gives me a search for a Neptubus. So honestly, if his play string on his turn isn't that great, then I'm going to be able to summon the Neptubus. If it is really good, and I have to potentially play around Stormforth or something like that, then I can summon Undyne, get a lure active off of the controller coming to my hand and stuff like that, and just give myself more cards. I have so many ways to give myself more cards, but it turns out he has a massively brick hand, even more so than the last game. I asked him what the rest of his cards in his hand were after this game, and it turns out his entire hand was Garnet, 2 Brilliant Fusions, Mithra, Stormforth, and Tenacity. So literally no activatable cards, because he only plays 1 Garnet, so the Brilliant Fusion can't be activated. He has 2 Brilliant Fusions, and then he could have summoned the Mithra, but like that would have put just a token on the board, wouldn't have done anything. And then he has the Stormforth and Tenacity, both of which, the Stormforth, there's nothing to tribute for, and the Tenacity, there's no Monarch to reveal for, so it's literally just an absolute brick. But he attacks over my Pike. I normal summon the Undyne on my turn, sending the other Dragoons, because there's only 1 left in the deck, so might as well, right? Get the controller, play a lure, draw 2, after getting a search for Megalo off of the Dragoons, and I just have so many cards. I have so many ways to do things, and I just want to just go crazy. I need to make a rank 4, and I also want to trigger the Neptubus from my hand. So I activate the Megalo in my hand, or at least one of them, because I drew a second one off of Allure of Darkness, and I discard Gund and a Gam Seal in order to, just summon the Megalo. I use Megalo's effect, searching the equip spell, and I use Gun's effect, specialing Pike from grave because it died last turn. Using Pike, discarding Neptubus, and then searching another Undyne because I have another Allure of Darkness in my hand for controller. If it makes it to another turn, I can just, send a water, add controller, get more cards. More cards is always good. And then, because the Neptubus hit the grave, it brings back the Dragoons, which allows me to make another Dweller, which gives another search. So, like, it's a lot of just different play cycling that I'm able to do here. And so, I end up searching a heavy infantry at some point. I think it's off the Dragoons that I ditched off Dweller, and then I drop the second Megalo, and I pop his back row with the Marksman that I had in my hand, and then I pop the Garnet with the heavy infantry that I searched that I also discarded off the Megalo. And I tribute Undyne to give the 3700 Megalo 2 attacks, and I have a Megalo that can attack once at 29, 2 37s, and then the 22 into his open board. So yeah, he bricked very, very badly. And that's honestly the only real way that I actually got very fortunate enough to just be able to go absolutely ham in that game. If he was able to put up a board, I would have had to take that much more carefully, but I believe that my hand, having Undyne and Allure in it, being able to give me so many more cards, would have actually potentially been able to have broken his board regardless, because like that's the kind of ideal situations you're trying to get into with this deck. But anyway, game 4, last game, I win the die roll, or rock, paper, scissors, die roll, and I tell him to go first, and he starts his turn off with Tenacity, revealing either, and searching for Domain, because he only plays 1 Domain because it's extra deck Monarchs, and like that's pretty standard, and so he wants to start getting his graveyard set up because his hand doesn't seem to be as strong as it could potentially have been, and so he searches Domain, plays it, reveals Aether, makes it level 6, normal summons Eidos, gets his additional tribute summon for the Aether, sends Pantheism and Prime to grave, summons another Aether out of his deck, and then banishes Pantheism, and he reveals Stormforth, Pantheism here. And so at this point, I'm just really like curious as to what he's trying to do, essentially. He takes a minute to contemplate what he reveals, but he does reveal Pantheism, Stormforth. And I take a second to contemplate, like, do I want to give him the guaranteed Stormforth, which I'm sure he probably already has one at this point, because he got either out of his deck. And so I give him the other Pantheism, because I don't think there's any other card in his hand that he would want to discard. If he already has the Stormforth, that's likely the only Monarch spell and trap in his hand, potentially. And that's what I'm banking on. So I give him the Pantheism, and likely enough I get rewarded for it, because he just sets 2 and passes. So I'm like, alright, one of those is a Stormforth, and one of those is either another card that you couldn't have discarded for Pantheism, or it's the Pantheism itself. So my hand is very, very strong for going second. I draw Undyne, which is great, because it allows me to play through the Stormforth. because it allows me to actually do potential things. So I start my turn off just trying to bait things out because I've got Teus plus heavy infantry, which means I can actually just go ahead and get his monster off his board and like potentially just like start molding the board state into the way that I want it. So I summon Teus, trigger the infantry, target his either that's on the board, and then get my search for a Gund off of the Teus because I'm expecting one of my monsters to go to graveyard off of a Stormforth being tributing it this turn. So I'm expecting to be able to revive something. And so one of his sets was Stormforth. He chains it, and then he also chains his Prime Monarch from grave, banishing to summon the Prime Monarch before everything resolves. That way there's no open board state where I could potentially do something to keep him from like getting an optimal Aether, which is very smart on his end. Very, very, very good. But, so since I know the Stormforth is active, definitely not going to summon that Neptibus. Like, that's absolutely not the play. So I normal summon the Undyne, send Dragoons to grave, and I'm going to trigger its effects. Since I've already got another Dragoons in my hand as well, like, this is actually just really strong. It's like just as strong as Neptibus because, like, I have the other Dragoons there. Like, it's very, very much in my favor. And so the Dragoons here searches for Megalo. I'm contemplating if I want to just, like, go for Marksman or another heavy infantry to, like, pop his Prime and definitely just bait out the either summon, but I ultimately just decide it's time to start throwing things at him. I actually had a very, very, like, intricate play line that I was going to go down in order to just bait that either out of his hand, like, 100%, and that was to drop the Megalo and use Neptibus as the material for it and summon the Dragoons, but then I was going to search my equip spell and I was going to overlay for Dracosac with the 2, and I wasn't going to make tokens. I was just going to tribute the Dracosac as cost for itself and attempt to pop his Prime Monarch, which would then trigger the Aether out of his hand. And then I was going to be able to get the search off this Dragoons that had already hit the grave, and I had Gund and Lead in my hand with another Megalo that I'm searching right here. And so I'd be able to, trigger his either, and then I would be able to, drop these 2 cards and then get myself in a situation where I don't have game, but I definitely have him very low and I'm able to put something like Flare Metal out, and he's already in a very, like, poor board state in terms of, like, he's just got fewer cards. But he ends up eithering on my Megalo effect, just because he doesn't want me to make any rank 7s or anything like that, because if I do make Gaios, like, I'm able to, like, equip Mizuchi and something onto it, which is potentially, like, threatening, I guess. I don't know. I guess he just didn't want me to trigger any more of my effects because I am triggering a Neptibus, bringing back Dragoons, and so I guess he didn't want me to get my Dragoons thing off. But so, he summons his either, gets Karaz out of his deck, and uses the Karaz to pop my Dragoons that I just summoned back, and then his set Pantheism. So I'm like, alright, that's where the Pantheism went. And I get to draw a card, and I end up drawing 1-for-1, which is actually just really good, because I can 1-for-1 discard the controller, summon Neptibus out of my deck, which I haven't used the first effect for yet, and so I use it to send a heavy infantry to pop his either. Even though I could easily just attack over his board, it just gives me more cards to work with, because now I get to Megalo, discard the Gun and the Lead, get the Lead back, and then I honestly probably should have just gotten Megalo back, but I just wanted to get the Lead back in case I wanted to discard a card out of his hand, because I wasn't sure if I was going to just, like, get a free shot at game here. But it just ended up working out in my favor because the entire board, even without Dweller, is able to attack for game because he has already used his Prime Monarch that turn, and that actually just ends up being the deciding factor. So Undyne really does just give this deck a huge amount of, like, potential staying power in the Monarch matchup because of the fact that it triggers on summon. Like, there's no potential window for you to not trigger your effects because of the fact that Stormforth and either exist. Like, that's the big problem in that matchup, and that's what made the deck that I played at Charlotte very, very weak to Extra Deck Monarchs. Like I said, those were my 2 losses, but honestly, I feel like this deck is potentially the way the deck needs to go moving forward, because you honestly need to see and access Dragoons, and if you don't, like, increase your odds of doing that with, like, other cards like Undyne and stuff that are actually searchable, like, it actually makes the deck a lot more cohesive if you actually just add Undynes in. Now, maybe 3-2 isn't the way to go, but definitely 2-2 is probably the minimum you want to play, because it also opens you up to amazing cards in the form of Allure of Darkness. But anyway, that's all for this video. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments down below. Like, comment, subscribe to all the nonsense you usually do. If you have a deck you want to suggest for me to play, send it to my Facebook fan page. Links in the description, and if it's something that I like, I'll give it a try. Stuff like that. But if you want to support me, clicking ads on my videos and disabling ad block when you view my videos is more than sufficient. It's the best way to support me, and it helps me out more than I can ever express, and it would be so appreciated. And it would definitely just keep motivating me to make more of these videos, because it lets me know you guys like them, and it, like, makes me be able to justify time to continue making these videos. And so if you want to keep seeing content from me like this, then you know what to do to help make that happen, essentially. But anyway, other than that, as always, guys, thanks for watching, and as always, guys, take care.